you so much for joining. Oh, you might have just heard a little thing saying that this webinar will be recorded. It will be available to the public, just so you know. Previous webinars are available on our website. So if you're interested in those, you can check those out, and we will share the link to this session with you in a follow-up email. So you are here today joining us for the webinar Earth Day WeCafé. This is a session on discussing where your values meet everyday business. We're so excited for this session. If you didn't know, today's Earth Day, so happy Earth Day to those who celebrate, which is literally everyone because we all live on this beautiful Earth. My name is Kelly Masson. I'm a business advisor here at WeBC. I'm coming to you from the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation here in Nanaimo on the island. And like I said earlier, you're welcome to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know which territory you're joining us from. One other thing, we'd like to hear from you if there's topics that you'd like us to consider for future webinars. We'll have a feedback poll at the very end of the session, and you can send it, you can give us your feedback then if you think about another session you'd like to hear about. So before we jump into our session today, just a quick introduction to WeBC for those of you who aren't familiar with our services. So WeBC is a not-for-profit. We work with women-owned businesses across the province, and we're here to provide support to you when you're on your small business journey. So we offer financing to help get businesses started and operating capital to fuel growth. I work primarily in our lending program. We get to offer more flexibility than traditional lenders. We take a more holistic approach and we look at your business in terms of viability, not just based on lending formulas. We also offer some other services. We have a business advisory service. We offer skills development workshops such as this one, as well as personalized business advising sessions. We also have a mentoring program where we can help you connect with a network of women entrepreneurs and experts around BC who can help support and inspire you. I could talk about this all day, and often I do, but for now, I'll just leave it to you to check out our website at we-bc.ca, sign up for our e-blasts if you're not already, and then you will be in the loop when we have something next coming up. So let's get into today's webinar. I'm so excited to be here on Earth Day. We were talking before this session about just how important Earth is, and it almost seems silly to say that, but it literally is the reason that we as humans exist. And Earth Day is a great moment to pause and ask, if you're a business person, what kind of impact do you want your business to have? And not just maybe aspirationally one day, although that's also important, but right now, what kind of choices can you be making every day? Um, so in honor of Earth Day, we're hosting this discussion to talk honestly about what it looks like to bring purpose into your business in ways that feel realistic, engaging, and aligned with your values. I think values is something that's going to come up a lot today. So whether you're thinking about how you can start making impact or you're already making steps or want fresh ideas, this conversation is for you. We're going to be talking about progress and not too much pressure, right? So I would like to introduce our panelists here. We have Maddie, Hillary, and Natalia here. I'm going to ask them each to just give a quick introduction of themselves and which organization they're here with today. And I also would like to hear, what does Earth Day mean to you? Just really quickly. Let's start with Maddie.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Maddie Best. I'm coming to you today from the unceded territories of the Lekwungen speaking peoples of the Songhees Nation and the Kasapsum Nation. Um, yeah, I I'm really excited to be here on Earth Day today. I feel like we hear a lot about climate and we talk about it a lot, and it's this really important thing. But I think it's also a nice reminder today about the part that you can take as an individual, the kind of small actions that you can take in the agency that you have in your own life to kind of make a difference, and also that it can be fun as well. So today, at our office, for example, we have a clothing swap happening. We had like a big garden planting party, and then I'm going to be spending the afternoon after work hammocking with my friends near the water. So, yeah, just a really nice day to appreciate um, yeah, what we have with our beautiful planet.
Wonderful. Thanks. Hillary.
Hi, I'm Hillary Henniger. I go by she, her. I live in the unceded traditional territory of the Cowichan people. Yeah, it's funny. I've been reflecting on this question because I noticed how cynical I've gotten recently about these sort of like flag waving moments about our virtue and what we believe in. And I think really it's about my relationship with Earth, like taking the moments that I have to just actually notice the smell and the breeze of the lilac bushes outside my window.
Mhm.
I'm gonna put my feet in the earth later and feel some like ground underneath me and just like really reflecting like what's my relationship with this incredible planet, with this mother of us all.
Thank you. Natalia?
Hi, I'm Natalia. I am grateful and really happy to be coming to you from the traditional territory of the Silks Okanagan peoples here in Kelowna. I'm just grateful to be able to live, work, and play on this land. And I think, Hillary, I'm waiting for those lilacs to come out. They're my favorite thing on earth. Um, but I sometimes see Earth Day as kind of like Valentine's Day. It's like a reminder to think about how you show up every day and what really is important to you every day. And it's just kind of like a, oh, okay, let's celebrate that and really bring attention to that. So I think for me, it's about that. My allergies are here today, so I'm reminded that the earth's coming alive again and all the plants are coming out and all the leaves. It's so beautiful. But I think today with my kids, one of the things that we like to do is to watch National Geographic shows. And I think for them, it's just so much, it's so great for them to see the vastness of the earth and just the beauty of the earth and kind of wonder, how do we keep it like this? How do we maintain this? And how do we enjoy this? So I think that's one thing I'll be doing today. So really happy to be here with you all. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. So you can see we have an amazing panel for you today, folks that really know what it's like to walk the talk and what the real challenges are behind that. As part of today's session, I'll be facilitating a discussion with these wonderful panelists, but we also want to hear from you. So we know that people are busy. You've taken the time out of your busy lives to join this session. We want to know what's feeling kind of urgent for you out there. What are you hoping to get out of this session? And if you can ask some of those questions or share some of those reflections in the chat, then I'll try to bring them into the discussion as we go. So I'm going to stop my screen share so we can look at beautiful faces here. Wonderful. Now I've lost my chat. There it is. So we can also, I can see that there's already been a few wonderful introductions. So please pop your questions in there as you go. So I'm going to start with a question. So I think there's a lot of business owners who want to have a positive impact with their business, but they might feel overwhelmed. Are there any small, realistic starting points that you've seen that can actually make a difference?
I can maybe start. So the perspective that I'm coming from, I work for a nonprofit called Synergy Foundation, and a lot of the work that we do is working one-on-one with small business owners, trying to find ways to practically apply circular practices, green practices into their existing operations. And I know the idea of kind of green practices, circular economy, sustainability can be really abstract and broad. One of the things that I like to start with, they really don't know where to start, is asking them if there's any specific frictions or bottlenecks or challenges in their day-to-day operations that are just frustrating for them, just overall. And a lot of the time we'll find that they're related to something to do with sustainability. So, for example, if they have too much waste that they're dealing with, or everything's disorganized, or they have purchasing problems or high energy bills, a lot of that kind of ties back to a change that they can make that will kind of impact their environmental footprint. So that's a really good starting place if you really don't know where to start.
Wonderful. Any other panelists have any suggestions for how to make a positive impact, but without maybe feeling overwhelmed or starting points you've seen that make a difference?
Yeah, I can go. I think I have a lot of experience working more in like large corporate environments. So I ran sustainability for retail for IKEA, and I think it sounds like a very different kind of approach, but we had to use a very similar approach as we would kind of think about small to medium enterprises is really just starting so small and talking to people about what does your daily work look like? What do you do every day? And then really picking out some of those things that we think are highlights of that could lead to more sustainable actions, or that leads to some goals that we have, or that will help us sustain into the future. And then what we can kind of do is just celebrate those little small wins and then say, okay, if these are the things that we think are really important and things that you really can do in your daily job, then let's make those bigger. Let's see where we can go with those. And are those kind of maybe the most important things for us? So you can kind of pick out sometimes some things that are already happening, and that really gives people some momentum to think about, oh, I'm already doing some really great things in my daily job. And that also kind of brings back the idea that people know their jobs best. I mean, it's really easy to kind of sit in an ivory tower and be like, these are the strategic things that you should be doing. But when you kind of flip and you have that conversation and say, what are you doing every day and what's meaningful for you and what's meaningful for our organization and our goals? I feel like some momentum happens there. And then that inspiration can kind of bring people to places where they might be willing to do more and to see kind of what that long-term approach could look like.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like for me, it's about coming back to first principles and coming back to your values and ultimately coming back to relationships, like I mentioned earlier. I think in our work and in our like kind of colonial context, it's so easy to like go first to like trying to think your way through solving pretty much everything. But ultimately, like you are a human body living on an earth that's living and breathing, and you're in relationship with other humans. And I think the more we actually live into that, the more we're going to be making decisions from that place. So it's about like lifting your eyes up, making eye contact with people you pass on the street, noticing this change of
Mm-hmm.
seasons, actually like paying attention to that sip of water and feeling that like life-giving force like moving through your body, and it's allowing yourself to experience grief when it's time to grieve, and actually allowing yourself to go through those cycles and those natural cycles, because those are the things that connect us to like what really matters. And then we can make choices such as like what's in our supply chain, such as how we treat our employees, such as what our even business model is, coming from that like that deep and real place.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that it's about being grounded. And when we're thinking about being grounded, we have a comment here. Where was it from? Suzanne is saying the first step is being impeccable with yourself, which maybe I take to mean being grounded in those values. Um, Values can guide decisions in any business model. I'd love to talk a little bit more about values and how that can guide your decisions. Are there any times that values have helped you make a tough decision, or that you've seen them make maybe a client or someone that you collaborate with make a tough decision? How do values play into all of this?
I can share. I used to be marketing director for Moto, the car share co-op in Vancouver. And one of the things that's really special about working for a co-op is that your member, that was like member owned, which means that like they have a, a voice in the business. And the co-op was started by six people who didn't want to have to own a car. They didn't believe in like owning cars. But sometimes they actually just needed one. They couldn't get where they needed to go just on foot or bike or transit. So they pooled their resources and they co-owned a car. And then that grew to 200, 500 cars. And one of the things that was very cool in those sort of like first 15 years of the co-op was that these are the people who joined were people who deeply believe in um, and having as light a footprint as possible. And so we, as an organization, made choices and and communicated based from those values. So we would say, "Oh, you're traveling out of the mainland. One way that you can both save money and reduce your footprint is to actually take a SkyTrain from downtown Vancouver to a car that's located in Surrey, so that you're reducing the amount of stop and go traffic driving that you're doing, which is a huge emissions and is also costly for you." So it's thinking about those ways that like our members really cared about that. And so we're like, hey, drive less. Find ways to actually reduce your, like thinking about them as like, and their values and centering those values in the way that we communicate, like what both the value we're offering as a business and how they think about using our product.
Wonderful.
I can share an experience that we had at IKEA years and years ago, and it was more in the supply chain, so I wasn't really part of this progress at all. But one of the biggest values there is taking responsibility is a privilege. So the fact that we have the ability to take that responsibility is something we should be thankful for. And probably some of you would remember back in the day when there was a huge kind of child labor. Yeah, a lot of people are talking about child labor and how terrible it was in many of the manufacturing areas. And a lot of companies just exited. They just left those manufacturers and kind of said, sorry, you're kind of not doing what we think is right. And they thought they were kind of living by their values and they just walked away. Whereas IKEA kind of took the different approach, which was how do we take responsibility for those families, for those people who are working there, for things that we didn't understand before, and how do we make it right? And the idea was really to think about how do you create a great space for people to bring their families and for the kids to have education at the same time? And how do we work with local partnerships to create those possibilities for families and children so families continue to have jobs and not that a huge company walks away and says it's not our problem.
Mm.
And then what they found is that they in the furniture manufacturing sector have the longest standing relationships with manufacturers than any other. And it takes some time and energy to think about how do we do this in a better way, but it really was about how do we stick to our values and not walk away from people. People are the center of our organization and what we do, how we work, who we connect with, and how do we make the right choice. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was the right choice. And I think, yes, that's a more larger kind of company example, but I think you can very much kind of do that in your everyday as well. Think about who are you partnering with and why are you partnering with them, and how do we both get value out of this as opposed to extractive thinking? And I think that was a really, really interesting example from a large company. And I think Patagonia and many others, I see, Hillary, you're wearing a Patagonia sweater right now. I think there's a lot of great examples out there of just making a really good choice and seeing what that brings you. And it's a long-term decision. We have to think more long-term, I think.
Wonderful. Maddie, did you have anything to add on this discussion about grounding in values?
Yeah, I think something that's coming to mind for me isn't necessarily the company that I'm working for right now, but an organization that I worked with in late 2025. This is like a kind of remote ski resort nonprofit on Vancouver Island. Um, Really out of the way. They have to like drive in all of their supplies, drive out all of their waste. But something that made it really special was they had this incredibly like strong community base. One of their like kind of key values was their community and respect for the area that they lived in. Um, and just taking care of the kind of mountain environment that they lived in. And it was really great to be able to work with them on the site visit, and kind of through the project that we were doing with them because I think that you see a lot of other organizations in similar situations will kind of take like the easy way out. They'll kind of like throw everything to landfill. They'll like, I don't know. I don't know. It was just nice getting to work with this organization that had this really strong community value. And as a result, all of the people that went to that resort that were like part of that community pitched together and already like inherently had like leave no trace principles, would help on big community days with like projects and would all support each other. And a lot of these things are more challenging to do than kind of like the easy way out. Um, but I think that kind of choosing these slightly more challenging or community-based mutual support kind of pathways that they took through running the resort and the organization, it kind of built a really strong community of people that kind of just naturally were kind of like magnetized to that organization, and they kind of self-selected and they had this really cool kind of culture and community because of that. So yeah, I think that's what came to mind for me.
I'd love to just like respond to that and just say like what I love about that point, Maddie, is just like, I think corporate culture can just get so like bland and this idea of just sort of like if you don't stand for anything, like if you stand for something basically. Like, and as a company, like that if you do take a stand, if you like, live your values, then you attract, team members who live those values and will stick to those values and make decisions from those values. You'll attract customers who are loyal to you and who like are also part of that like group effort to try to, live more sustainably.
Wonderful. We're talking about being grounded in values, and it kind of strikes me, um, it's kind of an easy thing to say, like I'm grounded in my values. Are there ways that you think, like if you were a small business owner, and you haven't done a lot of reflecting on this, are there some tangible steps that you think a small business owner could start taking today to kind of operationalize their values or help them understand what their values are and kind of work it into their decision making in maybe a more formal or thoughtful way?
Yeah, I mean, I can say at Impact Toolbox, we just went through that process of reevaluating, our theory of change, our mission, our vision. Does it really reflect what it is that we, as an organization of 5, 6 people, we really believe and we really embody? And it was really about having discussions and listening and talking to various stakeholders and figuring out this is what we're trying to do. And are we clear on that? And does it resonate with us? And what are our top 4 values? It took a little bit of time, but it was a really, really great exercise in coming together and having really great connective discussions between us. And in doing so and revisiting those, I really found that we embodied them again and kind of like renewed our vows, if you will. And it really helped us kind of think about, okay, well, if these are our values and this is our vision and this is our mission, then it's so much easier to not drift from our mission. It's easier to make decisions. It's easier for us to say, this is what we're going to put in our policy now because it reflects who we are. We've had multiple different things this year that we've had to overcome, and we've consistently gone back to, well, what do our values say? And what would that mean for how we work going forward? And then I think it just becomes something that leaders need to really commit to. And I think as leaders of organizations, that's where we really need to lead. And that's proper leadership, is saying, okay, what are our values and how do I embody those? And then how do I repair when I don't? How do we admit that we're wrong and admit that we've made a mistake and say this is what we've learned from? And it's okay for you to make mistakes too. Those are operation, like I think that's a way to operationalize it, is that we just have to live it. And in doing so, we do, like you said, attract the right people. We attract the right type of partners. It's really interesting to see once we kind of revisit those values, we really do know who we want to have a partnership with and who we don't. So yeah, I can say that from our perspective anyway.
I'll just say ditto.
Perfect.
Wonderful.
I have
Do
one,
you, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, kind of one small thing to add on to that, to what Natalia was saying. At Synergy Foundation, we also just recently kind of did that values exercise as well. And in the last year, we've kind of changed the way that we do our long-term planning. Yeah, we've had a lot of discussions over the last maybe 2 years and really kind of narrowed down what those specific values and missions are. And we have kind of incorporated that into our regular strategic planning. So we've set, I think they're called like our North Star goals, and we revisit these. We have monthly team meetings where we go through these, and we've kind of set these 5-year goals, broken those down into 1-year goals, and then we check on these once a month as an entire team and talk about like what we're proactively doing to kind of head in the direction of those goals that are aligned with the values. So I think, yeah, from the perspective of somebody running a business, that's a really great way to be really proactive about it instead of also just waiting for a situation to arise and thinking, okay, how would I approach this situation based off of my values? You can also kind of try to take them into account with your strategic planning. If you're doing like your regular strategic planning meetings, maybe start looking in ways that you can set goals around those values and start kind of building out your next steps with those as well.
Wonderful. I think I'll just add, and when it comes to like just in understanding what your values are, there are exercises out there that you can do that kind of help you think about all the different kinds of values there are and help you identify what yours are. So if you search it out online, you can find different things. We have a values exercise in one of our starting a business guides. And I find that can be a great way of bringing in values that you didn't realize were even that important to you. But you're like, no, like this is really important to me. So I suggest that as a way of like understanding the full universe of your values. Values are everything. Thank you for that discussion. I want to talk a little, pivot a little bit onto kind of sustainability today. I think there's some acknowledgement that sustainability, as as it is kind of falling down people's priority list. So we're seeing this in polls, policy making, that kind of thing. Are there any How do you think that this is impacting the way that businesses are tackling sustainability within their own operations? And do you have any do you have any suggestions to folks to how to consider that as they're making their own business decisions? Maybe a big question, but hmm. I'd love to hear people's thoughts in the chat as well of how they're moving forward with sustainable business decisions in light of maybe it not being such a priority for all clients.
I can also say too that I think transparency and vulnerability and storytelling are so important. So I think if we kind of flip the script a little bit and understand that perhaps it's not really as important these days in corporate environments or even political environments, it does go back to those values and it does go back to who are you as an organization? Who are you as a company? What are you trying to accomplish? Many of you women are doing purpose-driven companies, organization. You're out there for a reason. And I think that is sustainability right there. You're there to solve problems. You're there to meet people's needs. You're there to exist into the future. That's sustainability. And if you can think of sustainability as not this kind of huge dark cloud of something extra to do, but how does it create value for you and for your customers and for your, beneficiaries and clients, then we have a different discussion. Then we're not talking about, is our driver about reporting? Is our driver about stakeholder met? What is our driver? If our driver is to continue our purpose, to continue our vision, to continue our mission, to stick to our values, to solve problems for our clients and customers, then we just need to talk about it. We need to be honest about it. We need to be open about it. And I think therein lies kind of like the impact in what you're doing. That's sustainability. I think if you can create impact, you can create positive impact, locally, environmentally, socially, whichever way you're doing that, whether it's just solving people's problems. It's about having that conversation, being open about it, being vulnerable about it, and hopefully sustaining yourself into the future. Then we're kind of like, who cares what's going on in politics? No offense. I mean, of course, like we care, but it's kind of like it shouldn't stop us from doing what we want to do and reaching those goals and serving those people that we're hoping to serve. So I hope that it kind of inspires you to not think about, are we going to have to be reporting? Are we not reporting? What's happening in Europe, what's happening in everywhere else. It really just is about like going back to basics again and not being overwhelmed with what's going on around us. Because I think most of you are likely, doing something with purpose and you know what you're doing and you know why you're doing it.
Yeah, I think I love that so much what you're saying, and I think it brings it back to that point around like, well, I think probably everybody here in this room shares that this is something we live and breathe probably, and it's probably something you're just like, well, you just are, so, like this is just how you live. And when it comes to your business, sometimes we make this, it's like that part of our brain that is on like automatic living and right relationship can get separated a little bit because there's like the conventions of business that people are like, oh, well, when you put on an event, you just like order from Amazon to get the cheapest thing for this. And then, of course, you're just going to get the plastic, blah, 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 blah. But like, if you can just bring it back to like, how can I be in right relationship? But also, what's the opportunity there? What's my vision? My vision is an event that feels really good. That's where there's like, it's built on relationships that feel really good. You think about your, like, who are your suppliers going to be? Well, who locally does that? And how might that both like bring them into this event and give them some like, highlight them somehow by not only like supplying from them, but then talking about them, telling their story about what they do and why, you've decided to use the soap refillery place for your hand soap at the event versus like again getting the like, um, the Staples version of that. So thinking about like what is like both like the living of it personally and then bringing it into your business and then like how can you be telling that story in a way that encourages others and excites them and it inspires them and brings more energy back into them making those decisions too.
One more thing to add on to that. Yeah, I think you definitely do see fluctuations in the business environment and in politics around sustainability and green business practices and all of that. Working with the businesses that I've worked with, I get to see kind of firsthand how circularity, green business practices can really strengthen local businesses as well and make them a little bit more insulated from the kind of external market, what's happening in politics, all of that. They become a lot more resilient. I think a lot of what I see, especially, is kind of what Hillary was talking about, like partnerships with other local businesses. That's something that's really important and really ties in nicely with green business practices and sustainability. Really finding ways to collaborate with each other, whether that's like sharing resources. So, like, I'm thinking of like, I know a lot of agricultural producers and food and beverage businesses around like the Cowichan Valley that are currently like sharing delivery and transportation right now just due to rising like prices. And they like have this really strong business community. Um, I think that, yeah, collaborating with other businesses and kind of building a really strong network of other businesses, other founders, and working together can really help benefit yourself and others and kind of, yeah, be able to shelter you from some of the kind of challenging trends that we're seeing right now, and also boost everybody up and also make a positive impact and also work really well with your marketing. Like, there's so many benefits to it. I think a lot of people see green practices as like, oh my gosh, this is an expensive cost. Like, we're gonna have to be paying a premium for this and doing that, and it's just for reporting. But yeah, there are so many benefits to it that aren't just those kind of surface ones that people normally think of.
I love that you brought up the circularity piece and kind of like thinking about things in different ways because I think that innovation piece is a really important thing to think about. Um, I know there's a lot going on out there with sustainability, like we were talking about, and how it can be something overwhelming. But I think when you're solving problems like you are and you're thinking about, how can we do things differently? Circularity is a really great example. I used to run like our innovation department for circularity and sustainability at IKEA. And like that was one of the biggest opportunities. It was like, whoa, here's an opportunity we've never thought of. It's a take, make, waste environment. How do we think about circularity in a way that not only benefits everyone and the environment and the local kind of community of partners and service providers, but how do we how is that a unique selling proposition? Like why is that something, how can it be something different for us? And I think a lot of you probably have built businesses based on these innovative practices and thoughts. And it's kind of going back to what Hillary said too. It's like we can talk about that, we can tell that story. And that does build kind of like, brand affinity or great partnerships, or, when you're telling those stories from a place of genuine concern for the environment or solving the problems that you're solving, I think innovation is a huge part of probably what most of you are doing. And I think it's great to talk about those things and really help people understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Um, but I think something like circularity is like a great example of how do we do things differently? How do we depart from how we were doing it before to not only create positive impact, but create another, revenue stream, really create it again.
We've got some great comments in the chat. I wish I could read them all, but the comments about supporting local business are really resonating. Just being more thoughtful about keeping impact within the community. Some people are agreeing that ordering from Amazon can be problematic, which is great to hear. Um, so we were discussing a little bit there about I think Maddie, it was you who was talking about sometimes having to make how it can be seen as making a trade-off, like green business practices are a cost. But I am interested to hear if you can think of any times that you or a client that you know of has had to make a bit of a trade-off to make a decision that felt aligned with their values. So maybe they had to trade off cost, time, who their suppliers are, staffing. Can you think of any times that there's been a tough kind of decision that has to be made?
I have a million of them that come to mind. I'm going through my like Rolodex of different businesses that we've worked with. I think a lot of the time the trade-offs are there's cost, but I'll talk about time. Something that I think about a lot is like waste streams. My phone, we do a lot of site visits. My phone is just full of pictures of the insides of landfill bins. But a lot of what the circular economy is kind of finding untapped value in waste. So a really common one that we see a lot of the time is like breweries. They have a huge just amount of it's called spent grain. It's just a byproduct of the brewing process. And a lot of breweries, they have really high like waste hauling costs from just like sending this to landfill or paying like a compost for a compost pickup or stuff like that. But we've worked with a few of them that take the time to separate out their spent grain and have built up partnerships with local farmers or their like spent grain supplier. They kind of build that really great collaboration together. It does take more time for their staff to be able to separate it, a place to store it, like contacting the people that will pick it up. But then it builds this really strong reciprocal relationship. It like strengthens that kind of local business economy and it kind of builds that resiliency that I was talking about. So yeah, I feel like finding ways to take one of your challenging issues in your business, like your waste streams, and finding a creative solution for those. They can be time, it can cost a lot of time and maybe a little bit of money, but there are a lot of kind of intangible benefits that come from that that can outweigh. And it can sometimes be a little bit more challenging to see that because they're intangible. So you can be like, yeah, it's kind of hard to quantify sometimes, but I think that the benefit that this brewery that I'm thinking of gets out of spending that extra time and communicating with that supplier and transporting and backhauling that back to there is definitely worth kind of the cost that it takes to get all of that sorted out.
Hey, Maddie,
Yeah.
are there like services that help to connect small businesses with like those opportunities? Because I know like the brokering of that can sometimes be time consuming and
Yeah.
tricky.
Yeah, there's like a huge patchwork of like different organizations that are kind of hubs. There's not like one big, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. There's not like one main hub right now. Um, in terms of waste streams, I'd recommend connecting with Coast Waste Management Association. If anybody wants to hear about that, yeah, they are really great and have a ton of different connections. And there's a few organizations um, around kind of like coastal BC that are kind of doing this. But yeah, there's a really big gap right now in people or organizations that can connect to this. So something that Synergy Foundation is doing right now is a lot of hubs work. So we're going into kind of local communities. A lot of it's around construction waste right now, but going into local communities and like seeing what waste streams there are and finding recipients for it. It's a lot of kind of local networking. But yeah, that is actually a really big gap. There isn't off the top of my head any kind of one-stop shop for that.
Wonderful. Does anyone else have anything to share about maybe a trade-off that they've seen that's had to be made to kind of keep aligned with your values?
Well, I'll actually share, I'll kind of go back to that example I gave earlier about Moto, the car co-op. And again, I haven't worked there in many years. So like they're doing great and their challenges and opportunities they're dealing with now are different than they were back then. But we were in this moment where we were growing really fast and the membership was changing and the values and needs and demands of the membership were changing, especially because suddenly there was two more car share options in Vancouver. And those two options were corporate run and had deeper pockets and access to finance and investment capital, which a co-op generally does not. And the expectations were to have clean cars, like really much cleaner cars than like the co-op members of before had an expectation of. Before it was like you as a car co-op member, after you finish using the car, you clean the car. You like make, kind of leave no trace sort of mentality, which
Mhm.
was fine for the first, several thousand members, but it started to become less and less fine. And so then it also became, well, if we need to clean the cars more, we need to be making more revenue, which means we can't keep continuing to like tell people to not drive the cars, which was before it was like only drive us if you have to, because again, it was about living a lifestyle that was as carbon light as possible. And so then it was like, well, what are the other opportunities that we have? If we're not going to stop telling our members to like not drive our cars, like where can we help to like coming from this place of wanting to reduce the footprint for this whole region, where else can we look? And so looking at the business community, looking at like corporate fleets and how can we like we're really good at operating a fleet of cars, so how can we apply this to doing this for the city of Vancouver, for large organizations that already have fleets. And we know we can operate a fleet with the lightest possible footprint, the most efficiently, and really like in a cost-effective way. So it was about applying that. Like there was this challenge that we had, and it rubbed up against our values, but we figured out how to live our values in a way that was a little bit more expansive and didn't take away from the larger impact that we were creating.
Wonderful. I love that example. Anything else to share? I'm going to jump back. We have a question from one of our uh, attendees today. So Lindsay was wondering, based out of the story from Maddie about collaborating over deliveries, she's asking, do you think a mindset shift needs to occur for many businesses to transition from a competition-based mindset to a collaborative-based mindset? And what tools need to be made available for that? What a great question. Thanks, Lindsay.
Yeah, I really love that. I think that puts it really into really clear words. Um, we at Synergy Foundation, we have like a business incubator program for circular economy entrepreneurs, and something that I've seen come out of it. Obviously, we have like a cohort per year from like 20 to 25 entrepreneurs in the cohort that are all kind of different businesses, but they're all circular economy businesses. And it's really nice getting to watch these entrepreneurs collaborating with each other and all of the benefits that they get from that. And I see, like, in my day-to-day life now, I live in Victoria. I'll see businesses that have come through the program and other businesses that are in our network that are kind of on board with sustainability and green practices, and you see how many collaborations that they do with each other. Like three of them off the top of my head currently share like a light industrial space in Rock Bay where they do like manufacturing and gear repair. I think it's like it kind of comes inherently with green business practices and sustainability. There's a lot of benefits to it. So I have seen a lot of businesses kind of taking on collaboration and finding ways that they can support each other and seeing a lot of benefits from that. And kind of like a side benefit is the environmental footprint. And I think, yeah, I guess over the last few decades, globalization and things like Amazon and stuff and the convenience of those has really siloed everybody as well. I think that everybody needed to collaborate a lot more than than they do now. It is a little bit more inconvenient sometimes, but there are huge benefits from that, and you miss out on those when you kind of like favor that individual doing your own thing with whatever kind of online companies can support you instead of kind of connecting with other organizations in the local community that you can both kind of mutually benefit from the partnership from.
Thanks for that response. Would anyone else like to jump in?
Just think it's good business practice, really. Like we talk about this also in the nonprofit sector as well. It's like it doesn't make sense that we have so many organizations doing like basically the same thing, and some of them not very well. Like, how can you redirect your energy? And again, to Natalia's point earlier, is like, what's your theory of change? Let's get really clear on that, and what's the part of it that you can be responsible for and contribute towards, and then where are others doing really well at that you don't have to duplicate efforts, and then where can you actually like have relationships where you're actually exchanging with each other.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think the mindset shift in corporate, I think that was part of the question too. And it is difficult because I do feel like for a lot of big corporates, it's about drivers, right? So it's again about like what are the things that we have to do. And I think one of the things that is really helpful or has been really helpful to larger companies that I've been observing is customer demand. People saying, I want more local, I want more, transparency. I want those things. So I think that's part of like what our responsibility is too, is to kind of vote with our dollars. And so those larger companies have to then fall into place. And so, the Walmarts of the world put expectations on their suppliers. And so we need to put expectations on them. So if we're thinking of not saying we all shop at Walmart, but it's an example of, that piece of the question that's more to the corporate. And then I also think there's a lot of companies who are leading by example, who are taking responsibility, who are also saying, like IKEA and Patagonia and these larger ones who are really saying, okay, we'll be leaders in this space, really thinking about how do we create social enterprises in our communities that we then buy their services from? How do we do those other types of things? And I think when they lead by example, then others can see that it's possible. So it's kind of a both and approach, I would think. We as consumers need to really be clear about what we want. And we know from, doing a lot of research, and I'm sure Hillary, with your marketing experience too, it's kind of this idea that what do people want and what will they actually purchase? And why will they purchase that? And why will they come to your brand or your organization for that?
Yeah.
How can you make them the hero, right? Like make sure that they know that when they purchase from you, that
Yeah.
part of the solution.
And just make it
Mhm.
an easy one for them. They don't have to think about it. Like they should know if I purchase from you or you or you, I don't really have to think about it. I mean, that's such a problem solver for many people.
Mhm.
I would love that. I'm a busy mom of two kids, and it's kind of like, okay, if I just know that I can easily spend my dollars here and I don't have to think about that, great.
Hmm. Hmm. Totally. Yeah, I often give the example of Camino chocolate, and they've got this really great hot chocolate. Like their hot chocolate is the best you can buy, and it's like a worker-owned co-op. They only source from like child labor-free, small cooperative farms in the global south. They're like, it's like on every single like point, I feel really good about like easily just buying that hot chocolate. I don't have to think about it.
Yep, agreed.
Thank you. Well, we're getting into kind of our last 10 minutes here. I would encourage folks, if you do have any burning questions, now's the time. Pop them in the chat and we'll see if we can get to some of those. Maybe we can kind of round out the discussion now with maybe making things tangible. Um, I'm wondering about the folks who maybe want to start setting goals, making more tangible changes in their business. Are there some practical ways that small businesses can set impact goals that are credible and proportionate? Like, how would you suggest that somebody gets started with goal setting for their small business?
I can start. I would say personally, I think like just like keep it simple, just like do not overcomplicate it. Really just do a bit of stakeholder management and find out what is important. What is important to you? What is important to your staff? What's important to your customer or whoever you're serving? And what are those top three areas in your operations, in what you're doing that are really important to you? And how can you move the needle on those in the next 3, 6, 9 months? And not to overwhelm. And everyone can kind of go back and say, okay, to lead to these, three things that we really want to change, what could that look like? And what are the numbers that we can, what are the stories we want to capture, and what are the numbers that we want to complement that with, so that we can really tell the story and we can see the difference, we can feel the difference. Um, and then build on that. I really used to think about like our full IKEA strategy and then thinking about, okay, how do we put that into retail and then in each country? And I was like, what are the top three things you need to move the needle on? And then really, really own those. Um, and I think it gives people a bit of an idea of like, okay, we don't have to do it all. It's not all due tomorrow, and we can move that just incrementally as we can in each of our roles. Similar to what Maddie said before about kind of thinking about what are those KPIs or what are those things that you want to look at every month, to lead to that 1 year, to lead to the 3 years.
Yeah, we can't do it all.
No, we can't. We want to, but we can't.
I also really liked what Natalia said about what's important to you, what's important to your customers, like kind of seeing everybody that comes into contact with your business, and get kind of getting the perspectives about, yeah, what is important to them is a really great place to start. And also just do one thing at a time. If like the idea of lots of things or kind of shifting your entire practices to green practices is overwhelming, that makes a lot of sense. If you kind of just take one or two little bites at a time, once they're in place, they become just like regular practice and you don't think about it, and then you can move on to the next. And you see yourself a year after today or 2 years from today, and you'll have made a lot more progress than you'll have felt like you were making week by week by doing these tiny little tasks, because it will just feel normal by the end of that. So just choose like one or two things at a time.
Awesome. Hillary, do you have anything to add?
I I think totally exactly the same, but I also would just say like I think as small businesses sometimes it's hard to kind of it gets overwhelming like just even thinking about tracking something anything beyond our like balance sheet like it's like I can get overwhelming, but like again going back to that just one thing like just what's the next purchase that you have to make and just give you like calendar book an hour to actually understand like who are the social enterprises in your community who could do that. And it takes longer in the beginning to get to know the landscape and to get to make those relationships with those folks. And it feels good. I think that's actually what keeps you going is the actual dopamine hits that you get from how good it feels to be working with social enterprises and other purpose driven businesses. So make the time for yourself. It's actually feels good.
I have a comment here from EcoTexture. It just says, I struggle with how to know metrics and tracking your impact. Are there any tools or resources out there that anyone can kind of suggest for folks who are getting started or want to know more?
Yeah, we at Impact Toolbox work a lot in impact measurement. Um, and we do some workshops and we do some different educational courses and cohorts on that. Um, but I do think starting simple is kind of the easiest way. It's just really thinking about what are those things that you want to track and then what would be meaningful for you and the people around you. And then we can kind of work back from there. But happy to connect on that too.
Awesome. Well, I think we're going to wrap up here in a minute, but I'd love to hear from each panelist if there's anything um, that you hope that the attendees today can kind of walk out of here um, to take with them into the next steps of their business. Is there any kind of, I guess I'm getting more philosophical, but almost like, do you have any parting words for folks who are looking to do more good in their business and move forward with their business in a good way with the earth?
I think for me, a really big thing that I've seen through my work is just the power of connecting with others. Everybody's already doing that today by joining this webinar and chatting in the chat and asking questions and learning. But I think talking to others that are in the same shoes as you, who have similar values, makes a huge, huge, huge difference. I think that the the prospect of becoming like a green business and all of that is it can be really overwhelming on top of just running a business. And so being able to learn from and connect with and problem solve with other people that have similar goals makes it so, so, so much easier. So I'd really encourage everybody to think about where they can find more connection with others, and collaboration and support, and also provide that support to people as well.
Awesome. That's a great tip. Networking, I guess, doesn't have to be scary.
Yeah, I love that. Finding like-minded people. I think also just really, really staying true to yourself. You know, what is your mission and vision? What are your values? If you have good values and you use those as a bit of a roadmap, you cannot go wrong. So I think it's also about kind of, making those decisions, assessing them. Did we learn something from that? Did we make a good decision? And I just want you all to be inspired to think about what are the things that you're already doing. I guarantee you, most of you here are already doing really fantastic things. So I would suggest to think about quantifying those, gathering stories about them, talking about them, and then really building some momentum that way. So I want you to leave here feeling inspired. You're not alone. It likely is at the core of what you're doing and who you are. So kind of just keep that up. And I don't think you can go wrong. I think it'll be good in the long run.
Awesome.
Yeah, and get to know, like if you're not already in relationship with the culture and the language of the traditional territories that you're on, like there's so much wisdom that has been passed down for like hundreds of generations about how do we like live in right relationship and steward these places. And it can be embedded even in the traditional place names. Like knowing the place name can tell you a lot about how to be in good relationship there. And then that can be an offering to you as almost a metaphor and a guiding principle for how you apply that to your everyday relationships and in your business.
Wonderful. Just going to share my screen again here. Okay. Well, that's about all the time we have. Just the biggest thank you to our panelists for taking the time out of their busy Earth days, I'm sure, to share their thoughts. I hope everyone is feeling inspired, has a few ideas for actions that they can start taking, and maybe a better understanding of how to connect those values with more tangible things in your business every day. Before we close off, I will just let you know about some of the upcoming things that we have coming up. We're always trying to make sure people know about our SMART programs. These are free online self-guided courses that we've developed. They can help you with your financial fitness, marketing. There's an operations course, and we just launched a course on business viability, which is focused on helping you understand different forms of capital and then also how you can make yourself loan ready. That's a really great course that I suggest people look into if they're looking at ways to grow their business and understanding different forms of capital. You can register for those on our website. We have a few upcoming sessions which we're really excited about. We have a session on advanced AI and how you can use AI in your business. And we also have a really great series coming up around cash flow management, which is really more exciting and important than maybe it sounds. And Cash Flow Canvas is a great way to look at that. So you can register on our website. I said that we would be doing a poll, but we don't have the poll set up. There was some kind of glitch. So you will be getting an email after this session. And in that session, we'll be sharing some information. Um, we'll share the link to this session and we'll also ask for feedback. And if you have any ideas for future sessions, please do let us know. I want to make sure there's nothing in the chat here. Wonderful. No burning questions there. So if that's it for the day, thank you so much everyone for joining. I hope you have a wonderful Earth Day. Go outside, feel the ground under your feet, smell a lilac if you're lucky enough to have that. If you're up north, maybe you smell the other smells of spring, which I remember from the melting snow. Uh, but anyway, thank you so much for joining everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. Happy Earth
Bye
Day,
bye.
everyone. Thank you, everyone.